Good evening.
Okay, so hello everyone. So happy you guys can make it out. Hello. We have David and Stephen and Rachel and Nira and Johanna and all these amazing people coming on. We're so excited. So I'm Esther.
I'm Tom.
And we're gonna go ahead and start. I'm gonna go ahead and turn on our screen. Thank you for joining us here at the, bear with me just one moment here, technical difficulties. One moment. Okay, bear with me here. Okay, can you guys all see our screen? Okay, very good. All right, so
We can move
is
that
this a
over.
little easier?
Yeah, is there a way to get rid of that? How can we adjust that?
Hang on one second here, everybody. How about that?
That's going to interfere. So can we shrink it? That's good.
Yeah, but then it's hard to see.
Okay. That's good. Right there. Perfect.
Okay,
That's great.
all right, but then you don't see everyone. That's okay for you?
Yes.
Okay, no problem. Okay, hang on.
No, you have it. This one single button. That
Okay.
one there.
Which one?
That one.
Okay, the
That's it.
boss has spoken. All right.
Well, we won't be able to see
Okay.
our own screen if that's in
Okay,
the way.
well, okay, it's all good. All right. So thank you again for joining all of us. Thank you for joining us tonight. And we're going to go ahead and start. This is part one of Reveal to Heal. And it's going to be a really great journey we're gonna take you on tonight. I really can't see them and I feel uncomfortable. Can I turn it back on?
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry, guys. We're having a little bit of technical difficulty here. I want to make sure we can see you and feel you. And is that okay?
That works.
All
for now.
right,
When it
good.
doesn't work, we'll switch back.
Okay, thank you. All right. So so tonight is going to be the Reveal to Heal. It's part one of a 2-part series, maybe 3, depending on what you guys want. And we're very excited because this is a very, very important topic that we're going to be talking about tonight. And like I said, it's going to be a very important journey. So you may hate us at the end of this, but I think you'll at some point learn to love us again.
Yes. Well, we're just messengers,
Yes.
and exploring it and have explored this ourselves for quite a few years. So we'll see how they feel at the end.
Yes.
We
All
won't,
right.
we won't prejudge.
That's right. Okay, so here we go, everybody. Oh, and we do want you to jot down your questions. So please write them down for yourselves, and we're gonna get to the questions at the end. All right, we're gonna leave some time for questions, so you can do that at the end. All right, and we're gonna get you to participate. So if I ask a question, feel free to make noise back there, raise your hands, kick and scream, whatever it is, to participate and have fun with us. Okay, so here we go.
There you go.
Okay, so how did we get here in the beginning?
Yeah. So I guess we're going to take a moment to just talk a little bit about
Yes.
our journey and how we ended up here together and working on this. A little background about myself. I'm an occupational therapist and an acupuncturist. I was I'm a first-generation American. My parents were both born and raised in Italy. I grew up here in Hollywood with amazing Italian food, which is always good. Actually, country Italian food. So a lot of it was plant-based, which was nice. And I guess from an early age, I was interested in the healthcare field because one of the earliest songs I fell in love with as a young kid and starting to listen to music was a song, Put the Lime in the Coconut. I don't know how many out there know that song, Put the Lime in the Coconut, but I found the lyrics very fascinating as a young kid. I thought that's what medicine was about. You put the lime in the coconut, you mix them both together, and then you feel better. So as an acupuncturist, we do a lot with herbs and herbal medicine. So I like that. I look back on that as a fun time. Over 30 years ago, as an occupational therapist, I did start specializing in an area of rehabilitation that was not in existence. It was very new. I was the first therapist in Florida to work with a group of neuro-otologists at the University of Miami to develop a program called vestibular rehabilitation. Now, vestibular rehabilitation focuses on inner ear. The vestibular system is part of our inner ear system, not related to hearing, but the balance system in our inner ear. So it focused on inner ear disorders, balance problems, vertigo, and dizziness. So when I started this journey about 30 years ago, as I was in the process of developing this program, I came down with a terrible upper respiratory infection. It lasted several weeks. I still remember it. It was that devastating. It was a flu. And fortunately, I was working with some of the best ENTs in the country. And as I went back to work, still having congestion and feeling not great, the ENT doctor I was working with examined my ears, and he identified that I had an inner ear infection. So he gave me antibiotics, and I took the antibiotics and the recommendations from him about medicines. And about a week later, I thought I was feeling better, but all of a sudden I started experiencing symptoms, what I would call woozy symptoms, symptoms of lightheadedness, unsteadiness, sway sensation. I was like confused. I thought, wow, I must still have this infection. So I went back to the ENT. I had him re-examine me, and he said, interestingly enough, he says, no, you no longer have an inner ear infection. You no longer have a middle ear infection, Tom. He says, you have an inner ear problem now. And he said, the only real medicine for this, or remedy for this, is for you to do your own program that you're working on developing right now. So I was like, wow, I'm working hard. I'm very busy. How am I going to spend time doing my own program? I got to get better quicker. And he laughed and he said, no, that's the way you're going to have to do it. So it actually made me a much better practitioner. I got better doing the program, and I recovered, and I could now relate very well to how these patients were suffering with what was, or what I call today, an invisible disorder. It's not visible. It's not like you're walking around with a cane or you have a cast on your arm. It's an internal disruption to your sensory system. So along this path, I've been married now for over 30 years. My wife at the time was an occupational therapist also. And she then began to work in the practice that we developed for specializing in inner ear disorders, or the name of the practice was Florida Balance Centers. We opened that practice in 1992 and here in Broward County. But about 12 years ago, she was diagnosed with early onset Alzheimer's. So, and she has been now bedridden and unaware of who I am for over 5 years. And she's currently in the late stages of hospice. So that's where we're at now in her condition. It was devastating news for me. It was very hard. I have 2 children. One at the time was in middle school and another one was about to begin college. It felt to me like the world was crumbling around me. It was the most challenging time in my life. The stress of being a single parent, a caregiver, a partner, running a practice. And then at the same time, I lost a very close friend who was an occupational therapist to cancer. I really was feeling not as healthy. I thought my health was at risk. I saw that I was feeling ill a lot of the time. And as much as I knew about health and wellness, I was still struggling. I started experiencing some problems with rashes on my hands and feet. So I went to my doctors and they diagnosed me with an autoimmune disorder. So at that point in time, it was in the family of eczema. And he said, not to worry, it's not cancer. You're not going to die of cancer. This condition is mostly related to stress. So I said, well, you understand my situation. He did. And he offered whatever medicines he could offer. But as an acupuncturist, I was unwilling to just live with the answer of just taking medicines to just treat the symptom. I really wanted to know what was at the root cause of this in my body. Why? I know I was under stress, but why was my body starting to fail me? And after a lot of prayer and meditation, interestingly enough, I discovered the work of medical medium. And we'll talk a little bit more about him in another slide in a minute. And as a result, his work literally saved my life as my health was really severely tested. And so at the same time in our practice, we were going through a stressor where we were losing a staff member who had been well trained and worked with us for many years. And so then another miracle occurred. we were looking for, as we began to look for a person to fill that position, interestingly enough, right around when we started that search, Esther walked into our office and submitted a resume. And so ironically, we were able to fill that position immediately. And to me, she's a little angel that's come and helped to rescue the practice and build us back up. And she's still causing trouble in the clinic every day. So that's how we ended up here doing this talk and sharing this great work. So I hope the info we share with you tonight will hopefully bring awareness and cause you to question what's really happening to us as we humans struggle to thrive on this planet. And with that, I'll turn it over to Esther so you can tell us a little bit about your journey.
Thank you very much. So first, I just want to acknowledge Tom. I know that was the first time that he's ever shared his story in a public forum like this. And I know it's not an easy journey for him, but he's an amazing individual. And I'm so lucky to have found him and that we found each other. So, so let me share my quick story here. So I was born in Ukraine, Kiev, Ukraine, which is formerly known as Russia. I don't know if I'm saying that right, so forgive me for those of you that know geography and world, history and all that. I moved here when I was 5 with my parents, and I too actually wanted to go into the healing profession as a very young child, not knowing why. One of my first jobs was actually at a physical therapy office. So it's very interesting how I ended up back in the health field in my adult years. Ironically, on that job, it was one of my first jobs. And ironically, there was a health screening that was happening. And I was tested like some of the other employees, and I was diagnosed and tested and diagnosed with a autoimmune as well. And that autoimmune was called thrombocytopenia. I'm shocked that I can even pronounce it, but also known as ITP. And how we are diagnosed is based on platelet count. And so I had a very low platelet count, and that's how they knew. Some of the symptoms that I also experienced were brain fog, fatigue, inflammation, all kinds of bruising, and just all kinds of mystery symptoms, as we call them. I was placed on meds, and those medications gave me terrible side effects. I was also told that there was no cure for this condition, and that my spleen would have to be removed, surgically removed at some point if I wanted to get better. I eventually, for those people that know me, I'm a very rebellious person. And to me, that was not a solution. So I said, no, thank you, not today. And I went on to look for alternative solutions. And that is when I found the holistic way. I did improve tremendously. And till this day, I have not taken another pill for that condition.
Bravo.
Thank you. So as life continued to unfold, I did go through the challenges of several marriages, 2 to be exact, so that nobody adds any numbers. And also had career challenges, ups and downs. And I did end up in the corporate sector, working there for 2 decades. I did leadership development and business and leadership development. And that is when my work with emotional intelligence got discovered and developed. And that is when I came up with the EIEQ Institute. And I came up with the concept of recognize your level of crazy and manage it with EQ. And so basically it's just another lighthearted way of saying, hey, let's become more self-aware and self-managed and make the world a better place for all of us. So as I continued working in corporate, years continued, and I kept getting a soul nudge. I call it the soul nudge, where I kept having a vision that I would be working in the healthcare field, and I would be with my partner, my life partner. And this partner would be also in the healthcare field, and he would be very much like Tom, but I didn't know it was Tom. So I just kept having this vision. And eventually I knew that I kept getting this vision that across the street from where we lived with my folks was an office park. And for some reason, I felt like I needed to go there and give out my resume. So one day I got sick of this nudge and I said, okay. And I went across the street and 5 offices in, I came in, I gave my resume to the office manager, and an hour later I get a phone call. And the rest is history.
Mhm.
Now, part of working here for the first couple months, I right away went to Tom for his medical advice. And I explained to him that though I was better from my new way of life, I was still struggling. I had brain fog still, and I did have certain inflammation. I was still bruising, and I couldn't understand why I was still experiencing these autoimmune symptoms. And Tom graciously showed me the information for medical medium. And within a week, I saw a tremendous change in my concentration. My brain fog was lifted, and I was on the road to recovery. And today I feel very different in a good way. And so that is why we are so passionate about this work that we're about to share with you. This is again going to be about the reveal to heal. So it's going to be the information on the first step, and part 2 is where we're going to show you how to do it. So you ready? You guys are ready out there? You still sleep? You awake?
We haven't lost them yet, I
good.
guess. Okay,
All
good.
right, so here we go. So we want to first acknowledge the person that has helped us with this work, medical medium Anthony Williams. He is our mentor. He is our teacher. We do not know this man. We wish we knew this man. So if anybody knows him personally and wants to introduce us, we'd love that.
Yeah, we'd love that.
But we want to just acknowledge him. We want to honor him for the work that he's done. And we want to say thank you for your courage and for your continuous commitment to bring truth out into the world, because you just want to save lives. That's it.
Yes, ditto to that. That's great.
Okay. And that's the work that you want to really look into if you want more information on this.
Great.
Okay, so here we go. We're going to start asking some really important questions here. So the current state of our health as a global community. Who wants to know the answer to this question? Raise your hand.
What's the current state of this? Is the question, what's the current state?
Yes.
Okay, so
the question here is, what is the current state of our health as a global community?
well, let's just go over this quickly. We can see the slide. I think
Yes.
that we have a sense in the world, but especially because we're in a practice where we're seeing clients who are struggling with chronic illness or pain conditions or dizziness or vertigo, balance problems, a variety of conditions. But I think as we look and reflect and look at the studies and the news we hear on a daily basis, that maybe the current state of our health is not in an optimal way. It's like progressing in a way that's causing more chronic illness. We're seeing maybe decreases in longevity for people who are being born currently now. We have a population explosion, in the world since the industrial era, since the late 1700s or 1600s. We see a dramatic increase in the population. That's putting excessive demands on our natural resources. And it's causing excess pollution and storage of waste materials. So we see a lot of changes that maybe there's a lot of technological advances. We have more conveniences. We live in nicer homes. We drive nice cars. But there's also the other side of this coin, which is what's the downside to all this progress?
So what is this? I can never say that word. Statistics.
You like the word stats.
Stats.
Let's use that
What
one.
do the stats say? So as you can see, Tom, take a look at this. The CDC reports that 6 out of 10 Americans live with at least one of these chronic illnesses. And we just named just between the two of us, we had one of them, right? So, how many people out there have these chronic illnesses? And the good news, though.
Yeah, I'd even venture to say that the 6 out of 10 is probably not even a fully reflective number. So, and many people are living with more than one of these types of chronic conditions.
Right.
So, and it's interesting, right? The CDC says, well, that they might be able to prevent these kinds of chronic illnesses if you look at proper diet. This is what they list on their website: physical activity, avoiding tobacco and limiting alcohol, kind of that one's a common sense one, and healthy mental attitude, which is emotional intelligence work.
Right.
So, it's interesting they're recommending all of these things, but I think we need to take a closer look at what does that really mean? What does proper diet mean?
And why are we still so sick?
Exactly, if these recommendations are there.
So how did we get here? I love this photo, right? I love this photo. So it kind of makes me wonder, like, exactly.
Well, as I studied all this work, I was always questioning, like, where do we humans originate from? When were we living in an optimal time? And we talk about the Garden of Eden. I always think of that story as like, wow, what would it be like to go to a place where everything was just perfect? Food was just hanging on trees and we're just living a perfect, clean, healthy life. But evidently, we don't have any records of that,
right,
statistically in our history books yet. But we did start out as hunter-gatherers. So we were eating, simple foods, whatever we could gather, wild foods, and hunting, animals. So there was no agriculture at that time. And then we moved into the agricultural age, which was when we could digest starches, which allowed our brains to grow bigger. We became smarter. Then we went on to the phase of domestication of animals. Now, interestingly enough, when we started domesticating animals and raising animals and living in close proximity to animals, some of the major plagues in the world were developed. So, we're talking now about a modern day plague, COVID, which, we're not sure where this originated, but we do know it was associated with maybe livestock and seafood markets. We're not sure, but it's interesting that this happened to humans way back in the beginning and earlier phases of time. Then we have humans migrating from Asia to Europe to America, and also spreading diseases. So this concept of humans and migration and spreading of disease has been in our history. Then we hit the industrial era. This is really fascinating and important too. As we go on to talk about the rest of the material, I put this slide in here because the industrial era is when we started really mass producing things, and we were pumping toxins and heavy metals and pollution into the environment. That was really the beginning of developing our modern time. So it has a very strong impact on what our health is today. And then we're talking about now, challenges with food production and sustainable housing, and we got global warming. We got all kinds of conditions happening because of population explosion. So a little bit of background before we begin.
And so what is the result of everything we just went through, right? And we're just starting out. So technically, chronic inflammation and disease.
Yes. And this is really at the root of what people talk about these days. Like, what's going on with people? Why are you feeling sick? Well, there's lots of inflammation. So
let's start pulling back the curtain to what is truly affecting humans and reveal to heal, which is what we're really doing here. We're going to be talking a lot about what is the root cause. So here we go, guys. So, wow, looks like there's a very big list here.
There is.
And there's more to come. Don't worry.
Well, I think this is a summary list. We don't want to scare them just yet. But this kind of summarizes what we look at now. We're asking everyone here who's joining us, let's take a look at maybe the root of the problem. In Chinese medicine, when I was taught how we look at someone or a condition they're having, they said there's two things you can look at. You look at their symptoms, what they're telling you they're having. What's the result of their symptoms? They're having a cough, or they might have, a strain or a sprain, or they may have a headache. Those are symptoms. But then they also taught us to look at what's the root of the problem. Where's the problem coming from? And I think these are the kind of questions we want to ask tonight. And we want you guys to look at these questions and ask them yourself and poke at them and question them and see what's really going on here.
So let's take a deeper look at each one of these.
Sure.
So now, before we do, though, we have to address one very important organ. And this is called the liver, right? Everyone has one, right? Just checking out there. You guys all have a liver, right? Raise your hands. I can't see.
Well,
I can't see you. There you go.
It's kind of another,
yes.
It's an invisible, how do we know we have these organs? We got our bodies and nobody gave us a manual for how to maintain our bodies.
Yes, well, I'm hoping that we all have one. So it's called the second brain. It's the workhorse.
Yes.
So tell us really quick, what is the liver and why is it so important?
Yeah, it's one of those things we take for granted, like most of our organs in our bodies, and all the organs are important. We're picking on the liver here because it is so valuable to protecting us. We talked about toxins in our environment. We talked about pathogens. We talked about a variety of things. Well, the liver is the main organ to act as a high-tech, super advanced TSA system.
Nice.
Like it's checking everything that comes into our body, no matter how it enters our body. It eventually makes its way to the liver via either the digestive tract or through the blood. And the liver is tagging and identifying pathogens, nutrients, all kinds of things to store it. It's trying to disarm and get rid of harmful materials. And it's trying to guard us, with its own personal immune system, because all the nasty, difficult, dirty, unclean things end up in the liver as a filtering process. So once the liver filters the blood, the nutrients and stuff like that, then the liver will release the blood to the heart to allow it to pump it to the rest of the body. So liver is our first line of defense.
So meaning to say that if the liver's working great, we're great. If the liver's doing bad, we bad.
Well, it's kind of one of those things that we have to take a closer look at.
Yes.
And we won't talk a lot about the liver here today, but I think more and more Americans may be getting their medical lab work back, and doctors might be pointing out that they have a fatty liver or, a sluggish liver. These are things that once they show up on a lab test, it's kind of a little bit too late. We'd like to catch it earlier and prevent that phase of happening to the liver.
So let's take a closer look at some of those toxins, some of those root causes that we talked about. We're going to go through each one of them really quick here. So environmental toxins, as you can see on the list here, all of these things, common sense, right? You would think these are common sense. We already know this. We live in a very toxic world. There's a lot of things out there that are polluting our waters, our air, some of the cleaning products we use. Now, some of the things that we don't always think about is the fragrances. And this is one of those things that we really want to become more conscious and really ask more questions. That, for example, some of the clothes that when we buy, right? They're sprayed. Did we know that?
With fungicides, herbicides, chemicals, so they can be transported long distances and stored for long periods of time.
Right. So the body absorbs that. And so now we have a lot of that stuff going into the liver and
the body. So we kind of there's simple solutions for that. Make sure you wash your clothing before you ever wear it.
Yes.
So don't just suddenly get a new piece of clothing and put it on. And that's something that I had to become aware of. I didn't realize that was happening to clothing. So it's, again, knowledge is power,
right?
So we're trying to reveal some things here that maybe we're not so aware of.
Right.
We want our houses to smell good. We have these fancy plug-in air fresheners, but what are they actually? Is anybody questioning what's in these chemicals that are being emitted into our environment that we're inhaling? And as I've looked a little closer, some of these things should have skull and crossbones on them. They really should. Some of them are more dangerous than a pack of cigarettes, but yet we're not educated. We're not aware. So how can we know, and how can we do better when we don't know better?
Right.
So, these are these toxins, by the way, as we just spoke about the liver, these all have to be managed by our liver. So again, how much of this can our liver handle as time goes on before it starts to have a problem?
Now, remember, this is part one. In part two, we will talk about the solutions. So remember that, just stick with us, okay? Yes. So if we're not giving you a lot of solutions, it's because that comes in part two. But we won't leave you hanging. So stay tuned.
Right. We want you to focus on the root of the problem.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. The second thing.
So pathogens. So a lot of us may not know, what are these exact little monsters that we're talking about? These pathogens, these bacteria. What is all that?
Well, I think we know more now, right?
We know now, yes.
Why do we know more now?
Well, I don't know.
Let's see. COVID just shut the world down for a year, right? COVID shut the world down for a year. It's funny. In our clinics, we've been talking about pathogens and these kinds of things, and everybody look at us kind of like, what are they talking about? Why is he bringing up pathogens? And that was I was doing that for about 2 or 3 years before COVID hit. And when COVID hit, our clients were like, dang, you were talking about this stuff. And I said, yes, because there's something happening here that we have to understand. And I think now COVID has made it real. These pathogens are mutating. They're becoming more aggressive. We're being exposed to changes that have occurred in these pathogens over these years. So we're having to wake up as a world to see that we got to pay attention here and do what we can now to protect ourselves from these pathogens.
And most of the population is harboring one or more of these pathogens inside of them. Everyone's at some point in their life has had a cold or a flu of sort.
Right.
So we all contain these on some level.
Yes.
Okay?
There's basically no one on the planet, unless you're at least living in some isolated area, that's not been exposed to something that's been transported around.
So high levels of fat in the blood. So let's talk a little bit about this. So, yes, it's common sense. Some people may think it's common sense. Okay, we don't want to be eating hamburgers and hot dogs and pizza and French fries all day, every day, right? And is that
right? Although they're very tasty, and many people do.
Right. And is that really what we're talking about? We're just talking about fat in general, whether it's coming from let's say a negative known fat or even a plant-based fat, any fat, period. Okay. And these are some of the things that it does to our bodies.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. If in modern times, there's a lot of talk about protein, high protein diets, or getting your protein in, making sure where you're getting your protein. But we got to be very careful here, because sometimes if we look at the word protein, we might want to substitute in the word fat, because if you look at proteins that mostly are described, they're typically very high in fat, whether it's plant-based or not, whether it's nuts and seeds and avocado and coconut, or whether it's hamburgers, chicken, fish, or, lamb, pork, whatever it is, olive oil or avocado oil, they're high in fat. And this gets into our bloodstream and it reduces the bloodstream's ability to transport nutrients. It also is hard on the liver, it's hard on the digestive system, and it minimizes oxygen to the cells. So it's really an important thing to pay attention to as we talk about the root of the problem here.
Dehydration. Ooh, this is a big one.
I'm going to take a sip right now. Right. So let's have something to drink.
Yes, everyone take something to drink.
Right.
There you go. Good job. Yes. So dehydration is a big one. We don't think about this, and we, usually we think, oh, we're working, I don't have time, I don't want to be bothered, we're going to the bathroom, who needs all that? But truthfully enough, if we don't drink enough, we are not eliminating enough. And when we're not eliminating enough, we are storing those toxins inside of us, hurting us very, very badly. So it's very important to hydrate and very important to eat a diet where you are eliminating constantly.
Right. Remember, I came up with a quick analogy here. Give me a second. I came up with an analogy just the other day, Esther. Remember that one? I said, imagine you had to wash your car. So you had two choices. You can wash your car with a squirt gun filled with water, or you could get a hose and wash your car. So you could see the effect. I like analogies that help you think about this. So yeah. Could you imagine using a squirt gun and wash that car? It's going to be really hard, isn't it? So let's use a hose, and that's what we mean by hydration. We're talking about really getting the body hydrated so it can eliminate toxins.
Okay, digestive issues. So, a lot of us have these issues, and there's reasons for that. And, obviously, like I said, in part 2, we're going to talk about how to help that situation. But we have to address why it's happening. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, let's again look at the root of the problem. For many years, we're seeing clients who are having problems with indigestion and poor digestion, slow metabolism. There's lots of names that have been given to this. IBS, all kinds of conditions. There's Crohn's disease. There's all kinds of things out there. But one of the key things that I've looked at is that, and I've seen, and medical mediums helped us understand, is that really the system is dealing with low hydrochloric acid production and digestive enzymes. Now that's a result of modern day diets, high in processed foods, high in fat, all these things that we're eating that are chemical based are putting so much strain on the digestive system that it's exhausting our production of these essential digestive enzymes. So that causes poor nutrient absorption because the foods won't break down. And then there's a thing called gut rot. If you cannot break down your foods, even in Chinese medicine, we talk about the stomach as a cooking device to break down the foods before sending it to the intestinal system. So if it doesn't get broken down because there's not enough hydrochloric acid, then we get what we call putrefaction, or gut rot.
Just the word itself
Sounds disgusting, right? So basically the food is rotting. It's like as if you left it on a countertop, and now it's forming gases and bloating and other related symptoms, feeling fatigue, all these things that people just learn to live with over time. And we're trying to help people optimize. So it's important to understand this.
And then chronic stress and emotional triggers. And, you know, when you are in a relationship, you guys understand what I mean about emotional triggers, right? Just kidding. All right. Tough crowd out there tonight. All right. Anyway.
We can laugh at it anyways.
That's right. So what does this do? So we know that we're in constant fight or flight, right? What that does to the body. I know for me, when I'm stressed and my emotions are not balanced, I can barely think straight. So imagine what it's doing to the body. It is constantly overworking the body, the adrenals, the adrenaline response, the cortisol that's released, and just so much burden on the body. Some of the symptoms are depression, lack of energy, forgetfulness, weakness, poor digestion, insomnia, confusion, and a host of other issues in the body.
Yes, chronic stress is one of the things we see is the most common factor for many people in as a part of their health condition. One of the things we try to help people address here in our clinics. You know, acupuncture is very good at trying to create a relaxation effect in the nervous system. Esther's emotional intelligence work helps people to think about how to manage their stressors in ways, gives them opportunities to look for solutions, how to think differently about them. All that's really important, because otherwise your body's producing this adrenaline all day long or on a constant basis, and that becomes corrosive and destructive to the body. And it puts a lot of pressure on the liver to have to absorb all that excess adrenaline, and then also causing adrenaline fatigue and now injuring other organs as well.
And I will also say that when I started to change my diet, my emotions did balance out, because it is very much connected. I didn't feel irritable. I felt more in control. I felt a lot of just a different vibe going through my body when I was changing the way that I was ingesting different, you know, the 3 questions we're going to talk about later, you know, when I was really building up my body instead of breaking it down.
Well, again, that's why we're looking at the root of the problem, because then if you're not addressing the root of the problem, the liver has no choice but to leak toxins and pathogens and into the blood. So you have what we call dirty blood. Right. If you have dirty blood, your brain cannot really optimally function. It can function, but you're going to have to find ways around things.
So reveal to heal. Now we're going even deeper. So you see the scuba guys,
What if there's scuba girls in there?
Okay, yes. I don't want to be politically incorrect. So here we go. We're going to go way deeper now. All right. So Tom, what is really, really going on? Well, let's not beat around the bush any longer. Okay. What's really going on out there?
Well, I think we talked about it, just touched about it on the evolution of humans, as we saw humans the evolution to modern time. But really, over the last 100 years, we've had a critical shift in what humans have been doing. And particularly, humans have been tinkering and experimenting, naturally so. Our minds are smarter, we're constantly evolving, but we've been experimenting with viruses and bacteria in the laboratory. They were experimenting with how to grow them, and how to also, we were looking at what feeds these organisms, because if you're going to experiment with them, you have to learn what grows these organisms. And then you also had to look, they also looked at experimentations on how to kill these pathogens. And as a result, we get mutations, you know, and that's what we're dealing with, mutations that have taken this 100 years to get us to where we are today. So the current state of affairs is now we are more exposed to more aggressive pathogens, causing what we have now, a pandemic or disease or chronic illness. So we're going to take a deeper look at how this is happening in our system. And
we're going to say, what are these troublemakers that are causing these issues?
Well, so we know this is what's going on. Next part of our presentation is what's contributing to this issue that we have here about what's happened over the last 100 years.
Okay, guys, this is going to be the moment of truth. Ready? Okay, here we go.
So we're going to talk about things that are troublemakers. And, you know, we put up a sign here and you think, wow, eggs, the perfect food. You know, it's been marketed as a miracle food. It's actually been a food that has sustained humanity for thousands of years. But medical research and science over the last 100 years has used eggs, unfortunately, to grow viruses and other pathogens in laboratories. So eggs have now become a primary food for these pathogens. So it's a very it's like one of those challenges. We can't really, we look at this and say, how could this be? You know, how could this be that this perfect food is now contributing to ill health? Well, viruses will now consume, when we eat an egg or egg products, viruses will proliferate. That's food for them. That's giving them fuel to grow. And when they eat the protein or the the fats in the egg, they consume this and excrete a toxin. And these toxins are what's causing lots of the root causes of our health conditions. So it also leads to what's been called the autoimmune theory. When modern medicine doesn't understand what's happening to us, like why we have arthritis or why we have certain other conditions like ITP, the theory that's been placed on it has been called an autoimmune disorder. And unfortunately, it's not clear, but autoimmune disorders have never been proven. There's no research that says, it's still a theory. There's no research that says that the body actually is going to attack itself for no reason. The body's gone haywire and it's just screwing up and attacking itself. That is what the work of medical medium has revealed. It's not that. It's actually that the immune system has identified pathogens in the body and is attempting to take care of that, and that's causing an inflammatory response. So this is a real critical troublemaker that we want you all to take a look at and question for yourself, and see if you can Google these things, do eggs, grow viruses in laboratories, or how are viruses, what's the relationship there? And I've done a lot of that, and there's plenty of evidence showing that this is a real issue and we should be aware of it.
Ooh, another one. You're killing me here, Tom.
Well, dairy, I know. Obviously, we're just gonna be the messengers and tell them what's what.
That's right.
So, we're talking about now the next troublemaker is dairy. So we talked about eggs. Now we got dairy. Well, what's wrong with dairy, right?
Right.
Well, we talked about fat in the blood. Both eggs and dairy are what? High in fats. Particularly eggs are high in cholesterol too. And both of these types of foods will strain the digestive system and the liver. Dairy contains lactose, a sugar, which is combined with fat. So when you think of dairy and eggs, we think of protein. But when you think of dairy, you also got to think of sugar. And that's the combination that gets missed. And viruses and bacteria feed on the lactose and the protein in the dairy. So all of this is contributing to the proliferation of these organisms in the human body.
All right. Well, this is TAO. We're nice, good Jewish kids. We don't eat pork, right? Wow. Who eats pork? I'm just kidding. You don't have to tell me. I'm just joking.
Well, when
pork chops are delicious, and I know I was raised on pork chops. Well, it's all good.
As I shared with you, I come from an Italian American household, and when I first read this book, the first three items: eggs, dairy, and pork, I literally put the book away. I did not pick it up for several months. It was like, there's no way that could be true. Right. How could that be? That's the staple of our diet. So it was only then months later when I started having more illness and conditions, and as I described earlier, that I picked the book up again and started taking it seriously.
Same here.
So as we know, again, high in fat, and pork seems to be one of the principal ones that's up there, but most it can have a lot of fat.
Yeah. And gluten, here we go. So gluten is a juicy one. Some of us may have more intolerance to the gluten than others. Some of us are still cheating about it. But regardless, gluten, unfortunately, is another one of these that feeds the bacteria and the pathogens.
Right. And to be clear, gluten is found in many grains.
Yes.
So you've got to look at, and you see most people are familiar with gluten. People are saying they're trying to buy gluten-free products. There's more awareness here. But still, we're talking about gluten intolerance. But really I think as we look a little deeper, I like the theory that it's not that you're gluten intolerant or allergic to gluten, but gluten actually feeds pathogens. In this case, particularly bacteria in the gut. And so these are things that will cause us lots of digestive distress and other conditions.
Yes. Ooh,
All right, so
juicy
now
one. All
we
right.
went from animal products, dairy,
Yes.
eggs and pork, but now the
Yes.
last three are plant-based products. So we're not we're not talking about being plant-based or vegan versus being, a carnivore, and we're not having a discussion about the types of diets that people are on or the fad diets. We're just going through why we need to take a look at some of these items. And first and foremost, corn is now in the USA and around the world a genetically modified organism. That means it's been genetically modified in a laboratory to be mass produced, so they can be tolerate the spraying of chemicals and weed killers and things like that, so they can mass produce these grains. Now, corn again has been a staple for human history to thrive and survive on. So if you could find good heirloom corn, not this, and that's very difficult to find. We've been looking for it, and it's rare that we found anything
there's heirloom tomatoes out there.
Right.
But again, we'll talk about this in part 2, so we don't want to go too off the rails. But
the talk about why corn is bad here, again, it feeds viruses and bacteria, and it creates, there's mold and fungus in the body as well. So it interferes with your detoxification and healing. It's an inflammatory food. Soy, another one. So
pretty much like the corn.
Soy is a little confusing because some people in the plant-based world think soy is a health food.
Right.
And even in the acupuncture world, we were taught that actually soy was not really designed to be a food source in the earliest days. Actually, soy, from the readings I did, was designed to be planted in the rice fields when they were trying to rest the ground and give the ground a chance to recover and rest from raising rice. So they would grow the soy and then turn it back into the ground to put nitrogen back into the soil. And with a little bit of ingenuity, I think they learned how to make, tofu and soy sauce, and so they fermented some soy. So they were using certain parts of it, but really it was not designed to be a protein that was easily digested by us as humans or even animals.
So we want to be careful of this one.
Yes.
Okay, so food additives. This might be a little bit of a mystery for some, but if you notice, start taking a look at some of the packaging, right? So something that we've been noticing a lot lately, like natural and artificial flavors, which, as we now know, is another form of MSG. Yeah,
so if you look at a lot of, I would invite you all to look at packaging out there. Everybody's, if most of us are trying, you're looking at ingredients or labels, and you'll come across this thing called natural flavor. They even use like organic natural flavor, So, I mean, there's just these labels, and we got to question, well, what is this? There used to be a big issue with MSG in our foods, right? Notice how that MSG was taken off out of the market, out of the food products. But now we have things like natural or artificial flavors, or just flavors. Now, if it's an essential oil, like I use the vanilla as an example, if something needs to have vanilla in it, it should have actual vanilla extract in it.
Yeah,
that's what it should say. But if it says natural vanilla flavor, then what is that? So we should be asking those questions, because those are chemicals, again, that what has to happen? The liver has to deal with this, has to filter it. So we're adding more and more toxins to the liver.
Now, what about all forms of vinegar, Tom? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that was a little surprising to me too. Vinegar, has been a staple in a lot of diets. Again, salads, Italians, all cultures use some form of vinegar. The Asians use it in their sauces and their preparation. But vinegar is another additive or another product that actually dehydrates the cell. And when it does that, it not only dehydrates the cell, but it traps the toxin in the cell. So, we want to be careful about use of vinegar, and we'll leak out let's give them a little taste for what to do. Instead of vinegar, we often recommend squeezing a little lemon.
Yes.
If you want your acidic taste with your salads and your dressings, switch to lemon or lime as the choice instead of vinegar. And it would really make a huge difference. Vinegar also leaches calcium out of the teeth and bones. So really a lot of things that we should be aware of. And that's why we're doing the Reveal to Heal.
Yep. Okay, excessive salt. I think this is something that a lot of people already know. It's a little bit, one of those that, thank God, the information is out there. So we don't have to spend a lot of time on it. Just know that this is pretty much what it does. It pickles the organs. It makes it difficult to detox. And it really concentrates toxins and poisons inside the body. And it causes dehydration.
Yes, everybody should be aware of it.
Now, I know we haven't lost you yet. We're probably going to lose you now. So hang on.
I know we're taking away all their good stuff.
I know.
So,
I know. Now, remember, okay, and we'll talk more about this again in part 2, but this one, look, if you have 1 cup every once in a while, okay, but let's talk about we're talking about truth, or
the reality
and the reality of these things. So
most people live on caffeine, right?
Yes.
Most people live on caffeine. I did for many years.
Exactly.
Until I realized, and it was revealed to me. And
you do better now.
Yeah, I saw that I didn't need the energy from caffeine when I shifted my diet, when I started paying attention to these troublemakers. And so I didn't need that energy. I naturally have energy, which is pretty amazing, because I said, when I started doing some of this work, I said, I'm not going to give up coffee because that's a plant, and I said, that's it. I'll do all these other things, but I'm not giving up coffee. And sure enough, I just naturally did it because I saw there was no need. Nice. But it's also hidden in chocolate, and matcha tea, black tea, energy drinks. So be careful. Caffeine is a way that we're using a stimulant to get ourselves through the day. Now that's putting a lot of stress on our body, on our adrenals. It's causing a fight or flight response in our bodies. It's acidifying the body. So, you can get side effects of blood sugar imbalance, headaches, insomnia, anxiousness. All of these are side effects of using too much caffeine.
Okay, so this one, maybe some people out there know about these. These are the industrial oils. A lot of, maybe there's some confusion about some of these, but really a lot of these are used for preserving foods, especially the processed foods. So for example, the other couple months ago, I found an alternative cheese, and inside on the label, I forgot to pay attention. It was just one of those moments where I was just like engrossed with the cheese. And so I didn't look at the label. And when I got home and I ate it and I felt bad, I realized it had some canola oil in it.
Right, you're talking about a plant-based cheese.
Yes.
Yeah, not a non-dairy cheese.
Exactly.
There's a lot of these, an alternative
cheese.
And instead, so the fat that was substituted was canola oil.
Right.
Which is now, canola oil acts as an irritant to the lining of the stomach. So these are things that we're not quite aware of. So we want you to become aware of this. Look for these types of industrial oils. Stick to your avocado oil, your olive oil, your coconut oil, and use them sparingly.
Yes.
So that you're using good oils, but you're also avoiding these industrial oils that cause a lot of problems in the body.
Oh, they're going to kill us now.
I know. How could fish ever be bad, right?
Well,
what do
and you've had a personal experience with why some of the fish is bad. So remind us again.
Well, the conversation, in modern times, we still don't know the answer for why someone gets Alzheimer's. And as I told you about my wife and her condition, we went to the best Western doctors we could find here locally, Harvard-trained medical doctors. We went to alternative practitioners, and still there is no clear, decisive evidence of what causes Alzheimer's. However, medical medium explains something that makes sense to me, and he describes Alzheimer's as being associated with mercury toxicity. Now that kind of shocked me, because when I read that, I said, wow, my wife, one of her favorite foods was tuna fish. She would eat that 3, 4, 5 times a week if she could, and she just loved it. And I used to think, it's probably not a good idea to eat that much. Don't you think and it was considered a health food, right? Fish is good for us, right? However, because of the pollution we talked about earlier in the slides, the population growth, we have the nuclear plant in Japan, which just, had this terrible, the Fukushima breakdown. We've had radiation and heavy metals dumped into the ocean, into the Pacific. So we have, unfortunately, a very polluted environment. We're overfishing. So all these things are leading to toxins building up in seafood in particular. Now, I always say to patients who come to me, if someone's pregnant and they go to their physician, and most physicians will tell this female who's pregnant, that they should avoid eating much fish.
Why is that? Because
it's high in mercury. Right. It's toxic to the fetus.
So the pregnant lady shouldn't eat it, but we should all eat it.
That's what I always say. My question is that if it's not good for someone who's pregnant, well, what about the rest of us?
Right.
So are we okay ingesting a little bit of toxins and heavy metals on a regular basis?
Right.
So now there is some good news. You still can have some fish. We recommend you limit it to like maybe wild salmon, trout, sardines. The fish that are lower in mercury, do some research on that. There are other toxins in fish that we got to be aware of: radiation toxicity, these dioxins, they're from industrial runoff. So do a little research and make sure you're aware. Another key thing here, if you're taking fish oils, supplements, right? We think that's healthy for our heart. Be very cautious, because the technology that says it can eliminate all mercury and toxins from that fish oil is still needs to be challenged. So I've moved that out of my practice many years ago, even before I started doing the medical medium work. But as soon as I heard that medical medium work, I was clearly not using any more of those fish oils. And it's really made a difference to take that out of our supplementation.
So alcohol, I try to have at least, I'm Russian, so, I have to have at least a shot every day.
Well, I guess, even I can't drink the vodka that's in this cup.
Exactly. So just kidding, guys. But alcohol, I think it's a pretty clear one, and we don't have to spend too much time on this, but it's interesting because we put the slides in order from the most harsh to the least harsh, and alcohol is actually the least one you should worry about. But they all matter. Yes, they all matter. But
they all matter.
This is the one that's like lower. Just work on the other ones first. And you might need an extra shot as you're working on the first ones.
Right. But obviously, alcohol, we all know is hard on the liver.
Yes.
Liver cirrhosis, right? So we don't want it. We want to protect our health. We want to protect our liver. So common sense here.
Yes, exactly.
A lot of information.
How do you guys feel? You can't go off mute for a second because we're not ready for questions, but anybody feel like, oh my God, like give me like a woo or like a something with your hands so we know that you're like feeling like we are, because that definitely was a lot of important information. And we're sorry we had to break it to you, but it is what it is. So here's the thing, guys. We are, we're right on time, which is great. And we wanted to pose a challenge to you for the next 30 days before we open it up for questions, right? And the 3 questions that we want to talk to you about. Yeah.
So the challenge is, we want you to monitor how many of these troublemaker foods or troublemakers are you being exposed to, are you consuming?
Yes.
Okay, so it's really just, we want you to just spend the next time we meet, time exploring this. And you'll just have, and that was very interesting to me when I first started down this path. I was like shocked at how much these foods are in our everyday diet or we're being exposed to them. So, and you were getting back to the 3 main questions that we ask when you're looking at these foods, you want to ask these 3 questions.
Yes. So the number 1, toxins. Am I increasing or decreasing my exposure to them? Right? So you always want to be asking yourself, am I increasing or decreasing?
Right. So when you're eating a piece of food, you're about to ingest something, ask yourself that question. Is this food going to increase the toxin load on my body and my liver? Or is it going to decrease it? Help me eliminate it.
And even if it's not a food, let's say you're at the store and you want to buy a fragrance, or you want to buy a scented candle, or you want to buy a cleaning product.
Exactly.
Am I increasing or am I decreasing my exposure to toxins?
Excellent.
Number 2, immune system. Am I building it up or am I breaking it down? Same thing. You're in the store. You're making a just choice right now. Everything's about decision. Am I building my immune system or am I breaking it down?
Right. Am I making it harder on my liver to manage toxins, or am I improving it by allowing the liver to get rid of toxins that's accumulated over many years? So that would help my immune system be stronger and fight off any new pathogens that we might be exposed to.
And then the 3rd question is the pathogens. Am I feeding or starving them? So same thing, because as we are trying to keep ourselves healthy in this environment that's constantly bombarding us with toxins, we have to stay strong. So if we are asking those questions, am I feeding a pathogen right now? Like, look, this is hard to do, guys. This is one of the things we wanted to really say is this is very hard to do. We are 90% there.
We shoot for 90%.
We shoot,
there's times that we're only 70%.
Exactly.
So we're doing our best too. We want you to know we're real.
Yes. And we ask these questions all day, every day, and every decision that we are in the world living. So it is not an easy thing to do. So it's about really education and just really, asking yourself. So we want to put you to that challenge until we see you in part 2. Okay. Where we're going to reveal the solutions. It's going to be a much different energy in that part. Okay, so here's the other tool that we're going to leave you with before we open up to questions. So this is our website, woozyvertigo.com. And as you can see, there's a tab on top there that says nutritional support. You can go there. You like the little red arrow? It's cute, right? You can go there and you can look up the information we just shared with you, and you will find solutions in there. So we're giving you a clue. If you don't want to wait till part 2, there are solutions in there already.
Yes.
Okay.
All the information is there. It's in Esther did a great job putting together the slides today, but also that information on the website. So I give a lot of credit to Esther for organizing it in such a good way that you can really start to understand more about what we're talking about here. And I'd like to say one more thing. We often talk about preventative medicine in this world. You know, we'd like to, everything should have been moving towards, when I started getting into these careers 30 years ago, the talk was preventative medicine, preventative medicine, preventative medicine. And yet I don't really see us practicing any real preventative medicine, but what we talk to you about tonight is critically preventative medicine. So if you're not even suffering with a health condition, and hopefully you're not, you would want to look at this as to protect yourself from future illness or conditions.
Yes.
So it's a real important thing to look at.
Thank you, Tom. And if you have any questions, as you see below there is our email address. It's my email address, and you can email us with any concerns or questions if we don't get to you tonight. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and you guys can open up to questions, Nira and Johanna, and we're here. And as long as you want us here. So thank you so much. So any questions, or we're just gonna?
Do you have any questions, Es? Remember, you had some questions for me before. Was there a question?
Well, I guess I can start. If nobody else has any questions, I can start with one question.
Oh, I have one.
Yes.
Okay,
go ahead.
This is David. I put it in the chat. I think we need more information on, at least I do, on pathogens.
So do you have a specific question, David, that we can address right now?
I haven't read anything about pathogens and how it affects diet or.
Yes, very good question, David. And that's what I was like you. That's what, when I was first struggling with health conditions, even if I went to doctors, no one talked about pathogens until I discovered the work of medical medium. And I know we've talked to you, you've been a good proponent of doing some celery juicing. We talked a little bit about that. That's in the next phase. We're going to be talking more about that. But these are ways to address pathogens in the body. Now, step back for a minute. I'm going to say pathogens. I was surprised too to understand that these pathogens we've been exposed to them along the way throughout our life, whether it was a cold, a flu, some other condition we might have had. Some people have talked about mononucleosis. That was a term that was used around. Both of my children, my daughter in high school and my son in college, came down with mono. Now, mono is the Epstein-Barr virus. And there are over 60 varieties of Epstein-Barr. Yet, if you go to get tested for this, the testing in modern science and modern medicine isn't there to look at what viruses do you have. They don't have the technology to do this, or at least we're not practicing it yet. And I think this is a big, big issue with why these underlying conditions are chronic and not being addressed properly. So pathogens, there's various types. We listed quite a few on the slide presentations, from the Epstein-Barr viruses to the herpetic viruses to the shingles virus. There's quite a few, and there are mutations of these viruses. As we talked about, humans have been tinkering to learn about viruses. I think sometimes with all good intention. I'm not saying there's some devious behavior here, but maybe there is. I don't know. But what I do know is that as humans, we experiment with things, and then we have consequences. And as a consequence of experimenting with viruses, we've caused these viruses to mutate. And viruses that were not harmful to us 100 years ago are now causing us serious health issues. So I don't know if that answers your question, David, but pathogens are the critical thing we have to look at in the body, along with toxic exposure.
Yeah.
Those two things are critical. Does that help, David?
No, but I'll look into it.
Was there a more specific question you have about pathogens? Now, pathogens means viruses, bacterias, funguses. There's
Well, how does the viruses affect your I forget what they call it, your
microbiome,
insides.
your inside,
Yeah,
your microbiome.
Right.
Right. Like, let's talk about like the one common virus, like there's a bacteria, streptococcus or strep, we'll call it. You know, everybody's talking about the gut. You got to fix the gut. You got to fix the gut. You got to get more good bacteria in your gut. But that's not addressing, getting good bacteria in the gut is never going to really address the bad bacteria you have stuck in there. So how are you going to get rid of the bad bacteria in your gut? Well, one, don't feed it. We talked about that. Gluten. Don't feed your gut gluten. If you got digestive problems, gluten's going to feed strep. So, and that's going to cause you inflammation. So, you know, that's a bacteria. There's viruses that will consume an egg. Let's say you ingest some eggs, and now you have Epstein-Barr stored in your liver, or around the thyroid, or around the joints. And that virus now will get food through the blood system and will start to activate. When it activates, it's going to excrete a toxin. That toxin could affect your joint, causing inflammation. So your body now has to struggle to get these toxins that these pathogens are creating out of the body. And this cycle has to be addressed for you to break out of the chronic illness and inflammation phase to come into optimal and improved health. And that's, I think your question, David, is super powerful, because you've got to understand this. Otherwise, trying to deal with these troublemakers is going to be really annoying. If you don't understand why, you're not going to want to change your ways.
Mhm.
This is what our society is encultured in us to eat.
Mhm. Right.
These are things that we've been taught are good for us,
Right.
and they were, but things have changed.
Right.
So it's time for us to wake up and understand that, so we can have power. And by having the knowledge, we can have the power to overcome and improve the quality of our lives.
And we have to trust that it's possible, because as a person who had an autoimmune and who's dealing with this for 20 years, I could have just taken the drugs that I was given and dealt with the side effects and just said, okay, this is how it is. But I thank God I was obnoxious enough and resilient enough and rebellious enough to say, no, this is not good enough. This is not good enough that you're telling me that I have to cut my organ out. You know, God, I believe that God put my spleen in there for a reason. I'm not going to just take it out.
Right.
You know?
And we're not blaming, you know, the medical society.
No.
We're saying, you know, they're giving you their best information. They're trying their best. So medicine, I think, is trying, and doctors are trying to give you a medicine to help you through some symptoms. But this reveal is about understanding the deeper root problem, you know. So you have choices. You can choose to continue to live with these things and use a medicine to get by with symptoms, you know, or you can choose to address the root cause of the problem. That takes more work. We're not going to lie, right? You got to be more conscious. You got to be more aware. You got to make better choices, and you got to walk the walk. You got to live it. Yeah. But these are choices that when I found out about them, I was more than happy to make.
Yes.
And so did you, Esther.
Yes. And it took time.
It did.
We're still working on it, and we will always work on it because we live in a world that is toxic. The world's probably not going to change. We have to be the ones to change. And we know that that's just a matter of fact. That's just a matter of fact.
Change starts at home.
Yes. So thank you so much, David. And you know where to find us.
I think Lois has a question.
Okay. Anybody else?
Sorry. I'm going out now to look for you. Where are you?
Hi, Lois. How are you?
All right. If I was going to just not eat anything on your list, then I would have to go in a complete fast. Literally. I mean, I was vegan for many years and then vegetarian, and now occasionally I don't eat fish I do eat fish a little bit, but I do have a lot of digestive problems, and one of the few things that I can digest that has protein, one of the very few things, is tofu, okay? And I do not eat meat, and if you told me that I would live an extra 20 years and be perfectly healthy if all I had to do was eat meat, I would say no. I am not going to eat dead animals. I don't believe in it. It is really against my religion more than anything. And I can't even eat meat anymore because I haven't eaten meat since 1960 something, and I'm now 76 years old. So imagine, like, 50 years, more than 50 years.
So what's your question?
Well, what is there left? There's no.
Great question. Lois, I love what you're saying.
Yes, and thank you for being real.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I have similar feelings as you. Like I moved towards more of a plant-based diet, but that's still doesn't completely solve the problem. So there's the issue where you with tofu, right? Because you're looking for, well, where's my protein going to come from? What I had to learn, and there's a really good documentary out there called Game Changers. So if it's on Netflix, thank you, Esther, Game Changer, it's on our website. If you look at it, when I saw Game Changer, it gave me the power, Lois, to move forward without this need for protein. You described protein. Where am I going to get my protein? Well, tofu. How about nuts and seeds? But they're too hard to digest, maybe for you, Lois, right? Or
I
how
cannot
about,
digest nuts and seeds.
exactly. So you turn to tofu. Now, where do we really get our bioavailable proteins? They come from green leafy vegetables. Actually, all plants have a certain amount of protein.
Well, I know that, but you'd have to eat a bushel basket of kale to get enough protein.
Well, I
I'm on a
think
very
that's,
low protein diet as it is.
well, I think that's a little bit of the misinformation. Remember, one of the root of the causes is there's misinformation. The big push in our society is get your protein, protein, protein. Well, you know, I think we got to question that, because the animals that we eat grass, they eat greens. They're, you know, if you look at a cow, a horse,
Yeah,
a
they
zebra,
eat bushel baskets.
they don't eat protein. If from your version of protein,
Well,
they don't really,
but do you know how much grains cats and cows and horses, they eat barrels full of that stuff.
you got that right. And that's right.
Barrels.
And
They don't eat a cup of it.
you're right. You're right. And so in order to detoxify the body and to get the amount of proteins you need to get enough of leafy greens in your body. Now fortunately we have modern day things called smoothies, or machines that make smoothies. So there's ways to take big bunches of spinach and blend it into a smaller, more concentrated form to ingest. And these are ways that we can really elevate our bodies, our liver, and help our liver cleanse. The liver also has a glycogen storage. So when we eat too many fats, and we constantly are putting, even, tofu is, you can turn it into soy, you get soybean oil from a seed that, tofu is a seed, so it produces an oil, soybean oil or tofu. All of it has certain levels of fat in it. But the liver needs glycogen reserves, and it doesn't need the quantity of proteins that we've been led to believe. Yeah. So I had to learn that myself. And that's when I actually lost quite a bit of weight. I mean, I was always working out. I did quite a bit of exercise. I was a CrossFitter. I was trying to stay in physical shape, but I wasn't losing weight, and I was overweight. But I don't say I lost weight. I say I lost toxins as a result of shifting and watching out for these troublemaker foods. Now,
But you don't eat meat?
Now I do on occasion, but I'm a 90-10er, so we're transparent. I just find that actually meat, sometimes I'd rather eat meat than I would some soy products.
Or the eggs and the dairy.
Or the eggs or the dairy. So I'm not saying I like it. I try to avoid it. I'm only doing that 10% of the time. So I'm trying to be 90% without, but there's times that I'll indulge in some meat or some chicken or some fish, but I try to keep it to a very big minimum.
Yes. So I would say, because there's other people waiting to ask questions, I would say, Lois, if you like, you don't have to wait till part 2. You can go to our website under the nutrition tab, and you can do some research there, and you can look up Also Medical Medium, who has
there's a list of
tons and tons of information. And that's why we share his information, because he is the leading expert on this. We're not experts. We are advocates. We are people that are living this, and we practice this in our clinic with our patients and ourselves. So definitely you want to go there. Yeah.
And really, this is not a restrictive diet. I mean, it sounds
Right.
like it, but Lois, everything else is available to you.
Right.
We just listed the troublemakers.
Right.
So go and hunt for
Yes.
all the other foods that are available out there. This is not a restrictive diet. You can
Right.
eat as much as you want.
Just do it the right
The
way.
right way, exactly.
Okay. So who's next?
Stephen, do you want to ask your question?
Who was?
Stephen Ringbinder?
What about Regina? She was waiting before me.
Okay,
Regina?
Regina?
Regina, little sister. Okay. Somebody wrote little sister. Okay.
Hi, yeah, I was just going to say that I really liked the presentation. And one thing that, and yes, I am the little sister of Esther. And super proud of you guys, because we're family. So I see you guys on the family side, right? Like I don't see you as much in your work environment. So this was really, really educational. And one thing that I know that was hard for me when I first started learning about this stuff was like, it was like a death sentence. Like, what do you mean no dairy? Like, I can't live without dairy. And then you take away the meat and then the chocolate and then the coffee. Like, I'm going to eat cardboard all day. Like, I'll never live. Like, I might as well just take myself out today, you know?
Right.
So I really appreciate that you guys are sharing your personal stories. That was really cool. And also just a reminder that these are baby steps. And
Exactly.
like, I do cleanses. I wasn't eating meat for a long time. And then my body was like, something was missing. And I felt like my body wasn't functioning as well as it could. So I started eating meat occasionally again. But I'm very mindful about when I do that. And so I think it's all in moderation. And I think that's what I heard you say, was that you're not saying never do it again. You're saying get
Well,
to know your body.
So just
He's
to
saying that, but that's
Yeah,
reality.
yes. Well,
So just to clarify one thing, and thank you, sis, for coming on and supporting us and always being our #1 fan. One thing we do want to clarify is that if you're looking to heal, and this is what MM says, Anthony Williams, this is what he says. If you're looking to heal a condition, like I was looking to heal,
mhm.
Tom was looking to heal. If you really want to heal something, then yes, you want to be a little extreme about what you're doing.
Or we should say moderation is not acceptable.
Is not
Regina. And
acceptable.
what Regina is saying
Yes.
is valid. We're not saying what you're saying is not valid. It's really valid
Yes.
if you don't have a health condition. Regina.
Right.
But
right.
if someone's suffering
Yeah,
with something,
I agree.
Yes.
yeah. So, you know,
I
and what you're
probably,
saying-
sorry
Go ahead.
to interrupt. Yeah, I think if I was, God forbid, right? If I was going through something major and
Yes.
I came to you and you said, okay, you know, you have some major illness and here's what you need to get rid of, then you ask yourself, how much is your life worth?
Exactly.
Exactly.
And if I knew that,
Exactly.
then I would say, okay, I'm not eating sugar until this goes away.
Right. Right.
And
you've
you have
made-
to be disciplined.
You've made an amazing transformation yourself, because I know you've been applying some of these things that we've talked about, and you've been helping with your allergies, and you've been doing so much better. And you can, I'm pretty sure you can honestly say that a lot of the things that you've shifted has helped you with your allergies. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and like the celery juice, like I do that because you guys inspired me, right? Like I've read some of his books a little bit, but I haven't really taken on his material. So for me, you guys are like great shortcuts because I
Yes.
get the information through you know?
Yes. And that's why we do it. That's why we do
Yeah.
it.
Yes. And-
Exactly.
And back to what Regina said, if you don't have much of a health condition, that's great.
Right.
Then if you want to do preventative medicine, then
Right.
baby steps are great. And
Right.
take baby steps
Yeah.
and just give up eggs for a while and see how you
Mhm.
feel, and try then dairy for a while. And you know, but like I said, that's a distinction about when we can't stand back and say moderation's okay if someone's really
Right.
struggling with a health
Exactly.
condition, because if they want to get better, it's real serious work,
Right.
and you got to be
Right.
really particular about making sure these
Discipline.
troublemakers
Yeah.
are
Details
Yeah,
matter.
the details matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, sis.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Very educated.
Steve, was there Steve? Did you
Hi,
want
Steve. How you
Yeah,
doing?
real briefly, you mentioned one of the fallback foods is leafy green vegetables. What do you do if your doctor tells you you can't have leafy green vegetables?
Well, first and foremost, you always got to follow.
You chop up your doctor in little pieces. Ay, caramba.
No, Esther, you follow what your doctor tells you to do. But you might want to look at, Steve, some of Medical Medium's books, read about this, and bring this to your doctor. And then see if your doctor, will explain. Maybe your doctor, you can question your doctor. Why does it say that green leafy vegetables can really help me heal? Why can't I have them, doc? And then have a little discussion with your doctor about it. But take some time here, Steve, to research a little bit of the medical medium work. He's got great books out there. He does YouTubes, and you can start to listen. The books are packed with medical information.
Mhm.
And so once you show that to a doctor, then have a debate or have a discussion with your doctor. Not a debate, but a discussion.
My terms.
Well,
is
actually, it wasn't my doctor, it was my dad's doctor, and he died in 2015.
So
Okay.
you have to, maybe you need to talk to another doctor
Yeah.
about the leafy greens and get another opinion about that.
I mean, he couldn't have leafy greens in the last few years of his life.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that goes back to our digestive system. That goes back why we spent a lot of time in this presentation about what's the root cause. Because even for me, a practitioner, I've studied medicine, both Western medicine as a therapist and then Eastern medicine as an acupuncturist.
Amen,
You know,
sister.
no one's
Long
taught
overdue.
no one's
Okay,
taught us
Omi?
about someone else talking there for a moment? Okay, sorry. So no one else has spoken about these kinds of critical issues in our body and what's going on. So, you know, when I found Medical Medium's work, it explained the missing pieces for me as to what is a way to optimize health. And we got to understand it. We just got to take time to look at it. We got to question it. And that's if you want to have an improved quality of health or quality of life, because we've accumulated all these things through a lifetime. Now there's some information I think is incredibly valuable, and we live it.
Yeah. So anyone else before we take this to a close?
Absolutely. I think we have Claudia, and that will be our last person, last
Okay.
question.
Okay.
Claudia?
Hello, everybody. First of all, I want to thank you for the work that you're doing. It's phenomenal. Second of all, I want to say I don't think there is anything new that I hadn't heard before. I've been blessed because of my mom's medical issues since she was my age.
Yes.
We were lucky to meet a holistic chiropractor, a member of the tribe that instructed us in what was good to eat and not good to eat. And because of my mom's cancer, I happened to be taking a class on raw food eating where I met the nutritionist, Rosanne Calabrese, that's helped my mom. So fully aware of the situation. The thing that I wanted to share is I do not know why it has been so difficult for me, knowing how harmful bad diet is. With the stress that we've been dealing with the last year, my mom's medical situation, I'm having the hardest time doing what's right for my body. And, you know, so I'm doing yoga, I'm doing meditation, I'm doing therapy, you know, things that can get me there, but I cannot get my head
Yes.
to take the proper care that my body deserves. I think that's the hardest for me, and that's what I wanted to share.
Yeah. Thank you, Claudia, for your honesty. You know, that's an EQ question. And I will tell you that that is something that I had to also deal with for a very long time when I was first diagnosed 20 plus years ago with my autoimmune. And it was before my EQ days. And I really understood all of that. But I had a drive in me that I wanted to get better. I knew that there was something about how I was feeling and the information I was getting from these doctors and these so-called solutions that they were giving me. For some reason, it just didn't vibe for me. And as I got older and I continued to suffer, and the suffering was bad enough, it was no more. There was no more time for screwing around, excuse my French. It was time to get to work. So by the time that I found Tom, I was in a place where I was starting a new job. I was still dealing with brain fog. I was dealing with all these things. And here he's like, you know, and he's very detailed, very precise. And we have a joke between us, the technical tips. Est, here's another technical tip. Here's another technical tip. And I was hearing this every single day, every 5 minutes about this new job. And between him and the office staff member giving me these technical tips, I was about to chop them both up in little pieces, you know? And the problem is that it was because I couldn't comprehend what they were saying in some things. Some things were coming to me naturally, but some of the report writing and the details in the business, and I just couldn't get it. So I knew I had to.
It. Why?
Because of my brain fog,
Right.
my lack of concentration, my digestion was bothering me. There were things that I couldn't understand. I was almost doing, there was like something missing. It was like I knew the dairy, I knew the gluten, I knew all that stuff, but it was like I just couldn't, what you said, I just couldn't be consistent. I would be consistent and then I wouldn't be consistent. And I was a vegetarian for a while. I tried certain things, just couldn't be consistent. And when I finally spoke to him and when my job, this final job, this career where I showed up and I was like finally in a place where I knew I was meant to be for some reason, the stakes were too high. The stakes were too high. And I said, that's it. And I went to Tom and he gave me the medical information, the medical medium information. And I took to it like a duck to water. And within 1 week, I started the celery juice right away. I took the eggs out right away. I was already doing the smoothies. And it was just a matter of getting rid of the other stuff. And it took me baby steps. I went 30 days on one thing, another 30 days on another thing. And that's how I did. And I did neuroassociation. So there are tools that I did, and we'll share them with you in part 2. And, you know, and if you guys want a part 3, but the stakes have to be big enough for a person to make the change. And that's not always the easy part, but you're right. That comes from up here.
Yeah.
So very good. And kudos to you for recognizing that, because most people, oh no, my this, my that, there's a lot of excuses being made in the world. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Hold on. There's a lot of excuses, and I'm not trying to blame anyone. I'm just saying that a lot of us, it's so hard to change. It's so freaking hard to change. Okay. And I'm telling you this because I am the person who developed recognize your level of crazy for a reason. Okay. It is so hard to freaking change. But when you make that decision, because the stakes are too high, you finally come to a place where you're at peace and you say, I'm going to do this. And you just take it one step at a time and you do it. And you see the light at the end of the tunnel, and you just can't. Like, I get emotional talking about it because you come out on the other side, and you just can't, and you'll do it. You'll do it.
Yeah. It's like the journey. Just like a journey of 1,000 miles, how do you start a journey of 1,000 miles? With the first step? You got to take that first step, you just and the next step and the next step. And for Esther, she was impressive when she heard the information. It was right for her. She went right to work on it right away. And I was quite impressed. I was actually shocked. I was like, it was hard for many of the patients to start making these changes, but Esther took it on right away. For me, I took baby steps, Claudia. It took me a year to even figure out it took me months to figure out how to avoid eggs in a diet. It took me months how to avoid dairy in my diet. It took me a year and I was using other foods, and I realized I'm using all these oils and all these fats and stir fries and all these nuts and seeds. So it took me, a good year and a half to finally start getting it. So I was on a track where I could see my progress. But it doesn't matter. Start wherever you can start. And there's a little phrase I like to say, success breeds success. So if you start with just one thing, and I would say if you wanted to start with one of the things out there, start with eggs. See if you can avoid eggs for just a week. Just see what that takes. And then if that works, continue it for 2 weeks. If that works, you might do it for 3 weeks. Before you know it, you don't realize that eggs are a problem anymore, not having them in your diet. And then you can do that with dairy, and do that with whatever it is, if it's pork or if it's meat products or anything else. And then you have a world to explore of other foods that you can have.
And then you become an alchemist, right? You become an alchemist. I love that word. You start to create, you start to become creative, and then it just becomes fun.
Yes.
Now we just have fun with it. We create these amazing dishes.
We annoy the heck out of waiters and waitresses at restaurants. But
we're very nice. We're very nice. We're probably the nicest about it.
We are nice, but we ask lots of questions.
We ask lots of questions. Yes.
So,
we've done, I think, a good job, and Michael in particular has done a phenomenal job, and he's much more disciplined than I am. To me, it's just baffling to me. There's been 3 times in my life when I've done the vegan diet with the raw for up to 3 months, plus the yoga and stuff. And I've seen the difference, the amazing difference it makes in my body, sleeping, emotionally, the way the brain functions so well, the way you feel so good. And it just baffles me. I know how good it is. I know it takes more work to, properly prepare your foods, but the benefits are amazing. Amazing, and you feel it and you see it, just from the way your brain functions.
Exactly.
And the fact that I cannot get me there again, we're staying, I would say we're 90% vegan. Milk is gone from our lives. If we do an egg, it's maybe 1 a week, if that, but so we're not 100% there. We're doing a really good job. It's just, I'm just baffled that I don't make it all the way. That's all.
Can I say something?
Yeah, okay, go.
When our next seminar will be when we know better, we do better. So Claudia, and we're going to show you some rituals and things we do that make this a little easier in our daily lives. So we're going to try to share pieces of that with you all. So it's a way to go through this so that you can get traction and continue on that road.
Yeah, the other thing I want to say, and I want to leave, I don't think we have any more time for any more questions, but I do want to say that I think a lot of people want to be Puritans. You know, I think they have to be Puritans about this. And the truth is, we're not.
Well,
I can't do it. Okay, I'm telling you right now, I cannot do it. That is why we are 90%, because it is very challenging. But I will tell you that when we do fall off the wagon, I'll talk for me, when I fall off the wagon, I feel the difference. And then that reminds me why I'm on the wagon in the first place. So I use my screw ups as lessons. So, you know, I want everyone to understand that this is you're a human being. It is not easy to be a human being. We are on this human journey. It is the hardest friggin' thing you'll ever do. And that is why we're here doing it. So don't ever think that you have to be a Puritan. Again, if you're trying to heal something, you're going to have to be a little bit more serious than someone else.
and you'll probably be a little more motivated if you're trying to
Right.
heal something.
But again, if you fall off the wagon a little bit,
Just
you
get
get
back
back on and start again.
Exactly.
And that's it. And there's no beating yourself up as
Yes.
long as you're making an effort.
If you're trying
know?
and you're trying, you'll get there. Just one step at a time.
Yes.
Baby
And
steps.
don't wait for part 2. Go to the site
Mhm.
and find the information so you guys can start learning and but do ask yourself those 3 questions when you're working. You know, take the 30-day challenge. So Mira, any other questions or we're good?
I think our time is up, but I just wrote in the chat that part 2 will be August 4th.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. And we thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We're just reading the comments really quickly here. So wonderful to be able to share this with everybody. And thank you so much for allowing us to do this. And it's so interesting because I talk about my intuition a lot. And a couple months back before we were asked to do this, I actually had a vision in the shower. You know, I said, wouldn't it be cool if we could do a healing corner for the temple? And then within a couple months, it actually presented itself. So it's very powerful when those kinds of things manifest, and so happy to be here and share with our community. Thank you
Yes,
so much.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night, everybody.
Good
Okay,
night,
you too.
everybody.